Hello everyone, my name is Chris Davis, I'm the video and feature producer here at 4Player, and this is my list of the top 10 games of 2013. You are Time Viking, a time traveler from the distant past, sent to our dystopian future. Your mission? Blow up the moon with your mind. How will you get there? By destroying all who stand before you using your telekinetic powers, and piling their corpses one upon the other until you reach the stars. Time Viking and Space Raptor comes to you from the twisted minds at Ska Studios, creators of the Dishwasher series as well as the more recent Charlie Murder. Time Viking, however, is an entirely different beast, and is modeled after its spiritual predecessor, the amazing 2009 title, I Made a Game with Zombies in It. As you build a tower composed of the destroyed remains of robot ninjas, 8-bit horrors, and missiles straight out of a 10-year-old sketchbook, you're driven onward and upward by a fantastic soundtrack that kindly reminds you that you are Time Viking, you travel through time, and that you blow up stuff with your mind. This rock ballad takes us through several genres that all of the cool kids on the block evidently listen to these days. Everything from solid instrumental rock, to angry speed metal, and the latest in Please Feel Sad for Me emo music, with even a tad of the Beastie Boys inspired rapping. Sadly, I didn't get to play this wonderful little title until well into January this year, but that's not without good reason. Time Viking bears the distinction of being the final video game release of 2013. Unleashed on an unsuspecting public only a handful of hours before the ball was to drop in Times Square. Considering that I make all these Game of the Year videos, I'm going to allow it. It may be short, just like its predecessor, but the fun you will have for that 15 minutes is something you'll want to experience over and over again. And it's $1. $1. Time Viking and Space Raptor is going to be the best bang for your buck game of this coming year. So if you own an Xbox 360 and don't buy this game, you simply don't like fun. Let me just preface this one real quick. Dead Space 2 was my game of the year for 2011, and I still absolutely love it in almost everything Visceral Games did with it. So, naturally, I had high hopes for what the next entry in the series would be. What we got, though, was a game mired in controversy thanks to a publisher that thinks that $60 a game isn't enough anymore, and that homogenization is the only way to make a game sell these days. In that respect, Dead Space 3 was a little bit of a letdown for me, but on the whole, I really enjoyed the game. The more open-world nature of this entry, the new necromorph designs, and the pretty strong story made for a great experience for me. The co-op especially surprised me, as it did something very few co-optional games like it try to do. Alter the single-player experience just slightly to make the secondary character more interesting and thus making a second playthrough of the game a very enticing prospect. For me, Dead Space 3 was a pretty dang good game, and I'm really hopeful that EA allows a fourth entry in the series to come to fruition. If you're a representative of EA and you're watching this, please take note. Your financial analysts are idiots to expect $5 million in sales on a survival horror title. Get the stars out of your eyes, and don't you goddamn dare tell Visceral that they can't do Dead Space 4. I only recently got into playing Payday II, but it's grown on me so much in such a short amount of time that I've really fallen in love with it. It makes me regret not spending any time with its 2011 predecessor, because I was an idiot at the time and didn't think a cops and robbers game would be all that interesting. And then Grand Theft Auto V was released, and its heist system, despite being fun, was neither what we imagined it to be, nor as frequent as we desired. After that, my attention turned to Overkill's latest title, and I am so glad that I found my fix. Payday 2, at its core, is essentially Left 4 Dead with cops instead of zombies. You'll scope out banks, jewelry stores, and government buildings, and when the time is right, don your mask and seize the loot. Though you'll be playing a bunch of the same missions over and over again, Overkill again takes notes from Valve's cooperative Zombie Fest by providing level variations. One playthrough of a bank heist might feature the vault in a different position, the presence of fewer security cameras, new fences and gates, and more. Though the general idea each time you play a level will be the same, the game puts strict emphasis on teamwork and scouting out your marks before taking them. Thus far, Payday II has been a blast to play. Its RPG-esque skill trees have made grinding not painful at all, and the variety of weapon modifications, tools, and masks that you can equip have been some stellar fun. Pulling off a job silently without anyone ever knowing you were there is immensely satisfying. But even if the cops are called and you're forced to fend off waves of SWAT, FBI, and National Guard soldiers, it's still exciting thanks to some pretty good AI and a rather kick-ass soundtrack. If you've been wanting a great co-op experience but are a little tired of zombies, check out Payday 2. It's frickin' fun. You know, it's easy to label developer as one fixed to a certain trope or genre of games. However, every now and then a studio will put out a lower scope project that's far different from what it was known for. Epic Games has experienced this right now with Fortnite. Telltale Games did it with their Poker Night titles, and now it's Starbreeze's turn with Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. Yes, Starbreeze, the studio that brought you The Darkness and The Chronicles of Riddick, made this gorgeous and rather unique little platformer that you're watching right now. Brothers is exactly what the name implies. A tale of the journey of two brothers to save their dad who has contracted a terrible disease. Though the game is a short 4 to 5 hour long experience, it's an emotional maelstrom that will have you laughing at one point and nearly at tears the next. The game's unique twin-stick control scheme of making each brother move and act independent of one another does take a bit to get used to, but the puzzles take strong advantage of this without being tiring or outlasting its welcome. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons is a fantastic little game that's more than worth your money, and I can only hope that Starbreeze finds a way to make a series out of this. It's a beautiful, fantastic adventure that Fable wishes it could be. Hint hint, Lionhead Studios. Pay attention. This one is probably going to turn some people's noses up, but I can't help it. I really enjoyed Crysis III. The first Crysis back in 2007 was not only a graphically demanding game, but it was a pretty good one to boot. Its 2011 sequel was almost as well received, albeit it was marred by a more linear-focused single-player campaign. But Crysis 3 wants to be the bridge between the two titles, bringing a semi-linear, visually beautiful game, coupled with the gameplay and design changes that were featured in the second entry. As I was surprised to learn in February, it largely succeeds. Though the story was more than a little rough around the edges, I really appreciate the variety of level design, the cinematic flair, and that bow. Oh man, that bow. I always said that the Crysis series has been the only real shooter on the market that makes you feel like a super soldier in addition to playing as one. And the compound bow that you get early in the game helps solidify this. Stalking my prey, taking them out one by one with arrows while invisible, felt wonderful. The multiplayer is where I wish players had focused more of their time though. Mechanically, very little has changed from Crysis 2 to 3, and in terms of multiplayer, that's a very good thing. It's the perfect blend of Call of Duty gameplay meeting Halo combat, and it feels great. The new Hunter mode was a grand highlight for me, as this zombie variant of invisible, super-powered hunters armed with bows hunting down a group of normal underarmed soldiers was fantastic fun. It was easily a far better Aliens game than Aliens Colonial Marines ever could dream of being. It was a great ride while it lasted, and I have no qualms whatsoever about placing it in my top 10 list.
Minefield. Cells using intelligent munitions.
Indie developer The Fulbright Company, a team originally composed of just 3 people, created something remarkable this past year with the release of Gone Home. You've seen it appear a lot on our top 10 video series, and I would be an absolute hypocrite to not include it on my list as well. Born out of financial constraints, an understanding of how to create environmental storytelling through exploration, and little to no budget, this trio moved in together, set up an office in their basement, and churned this sucker out in the course of a year and a half. The only thing I loathe about Gone Home is that it simply took me too long to sit down and play it. Fulbright sticking to their guns and making a game based on environmental exploration was the best call they could have made, as Gone Home is brimming with atmosphere. Exploring this exceptionally large and forbidding house in the middle of a thunderstorm at night is a surreal experience to be had. The game's excellent use of random background noise and thunder really lends a sense that you are not alone in this house. But that's not the case, though I kinda wish it was. Fulbright, if you're listening to this, we need a Gone Home spiritual sequel that has us doing the exact same thing, except this time, there's a psychotic murderer in the house and I have to escape. Please get on that. Not only does it give you a sense that you're trespassing on the life of a young girl coming of age, the story is told in such a way that you quickly begin to fall in love with Sam. I genuinely felt for our protagonist and everything she was going through, to the point in which I was genuinely near tears, fearful of what the attic had in store for me, with my face almost a waterfall after the final revelation played out. A pro tip for those who want to experience the game but need to hide that unmanly surrender water: if someone walks in on you playing the game, simply grab the nearest pair of scissors and jam it straight into the side of your thigh. Not only will you have completely distracted them from looking at your monitor, you'll also have legitimate excuse for crying. Incidentally, Kevin, can I have my scissors back?
No.
Okay then. All in all, Gone Home is a tremendous game that deserves a place in your game library. Naughty Dog surprised the hell out of the world when they revealed the existence of The Last of Us in December of 2011. Naughty Dog's a multi-team developer now? This is a zombie game? What's going on here? Despite having taken what felt like forever to release, The Last of Us arrived this past June and blew the world away, myself included. Yes, from a very simplistic perspective, this is a zombie game, heavily based on the escort mission design, but that description does the game a heavy disservice. Joel and Ellie's journey west over the course of a year is a heavily emotional one that never makes you not feel for them. The focus on scavenging to improve your makeshift weapons and items felt great, and really appealed to the survival horror elements the game was trying to convey. Encounters with survivors and infected felt well balanced on both sides, and distributed so well throughout the game that no scenario felt rehashed or inappropriate for the moment. I loved every single minute of that game, and that ending? Bold, very satisfying. Regrettably, I never got into the game's multiplayer, since I was initially put off that Naughty Dog didn't seem confident in revealing its existence until the final days leading up to the game's launch, because, in my experience, if you don't talk about the multiplayer up to a certain point in the promotion of your game, then it's probably not going to be worth anybody's time. That being said, Naughty Dog seems to have delivered. At least it's what Nolan and Carlos are constantly abusing me for not having played properly yet. I'll get to it, Brolos. I'll get to it.
I hear him up ahead.
Oh boy, here we go. Yes, BioShock Infinite is my number 3 game of 2013, and it's more than deserving of that title. Irrational Games put together a stellar experience here, and though it has some iffy design choices to it, it's still a fantastic game. A lot has been trumped up about ludonarrative dissonance, and how the core shooter gameplay could have been better, and how the game functions far different from the 2011 presentation we saw at E3. The message as a whole seems to be that Infinite didn't deliver nearly as well as we were led to believe, but I honestly don't give a damn. Who cares if certain story elements were only presented through audio logs? The combat felt great. The world of Columbia was wonderfully and imaginatively designed, with a fantastic critique of turn of the 19th century American society. And that story? Oh man, was it excellent! Booker and Elizabeth's journey to escape Columbia had me on the edge of my seat at every single story point, all the way to its shocking and rather amazing conclusion. The team at Irrational may have taken more than their fair share of flack for designing such a wonderful game, but I have almost nothing but praise to mention about the Infinite experience. I've always been a story guy, so narrative will always supersede gameplay and systems. I mean, come on guys. Thomas Was Alone is a simple puzzle platformer based around shapes, and it managed to have an incredibly emotional story. Let's just enjoy BioShock Infinite for what it is. A great game. Is that too much to ask? I had a tremendously hard time figuring out which of my top 2 games deserve the top spot on my list for 2013. Ultimately though, I had to make Splinter Cell Blacklist my number 2, but it was a very difficult decision. I've always loved the Splinter Cell series, and it would be tough for me to argue that it wasn't one of my primary reasons for getting an Xbox way back in 2002. Pandora Tomorrow, the sequel, was the sole reason I got broadband and signed up for Xbox Live. Chaos Theory is one of my top 10 games of all time, hands down. After such a radical departure in 2010 with Splinter Cell Conviction, I was worried about where the series was going, and so were many other fans. Thankfully, Ubisoft seems to have been paying attention to what fans were saying and made its sequel 3 years later an almost best-of title, combining many of the old and new elements the series is known for and fusing them into this rather stunning creation. Though I personally have issue with the way the story was handled and the nonsensical nature of Michael Ironside's replacement for the voice of aging main character Sam Fisher with the younger, out-of-place sounding Eric Johnson, it had very little bearing on the product as a whole. Gameplay and mechanics-wise, Blacklist is an incredibly sound experience, and so varied in the amount of approaches one could take to the game that you have to play it several times through to really experience everything there is to offer. Not to mention the variety of side missions and the interwoven cooperative campaign that can be completed at your leisure. The single player was a great experience, but the return of the Spies vs. Mercs multiplayer component was just as good as I hoped it'd be. The asymmetrical third versus first person gameplay made neither team more powerful than the other and made encounters all that more intense. Initially, I was really worried about 4v4, about unlimited respawns, about the core gameplay focusing on one terminal at a time instead of multiple units. Imagine my relief when all of my fears were unfounded and everything made sense. The level design, though limited to just 6 maps, was nicely varied and very balanced despite some spawn exploitation becoming less uncommon months after the game's release. The classic 2v2 mod I loved in my high school and early college days translated exceptionally well over 8 years on. Equally terrifying me as I entered a poorly lit room armed with just a flashlight and a rifle as a mercenary, and as I hid from a merc as a spy behind a crate, praying that they wouldn't come around the corner. Splinter Cell Blacklist is a fantastic game. And the only truly disappointing thing about it is that Ubisoft felt that over 2 million unit sales isn't enough to warrant post-launch DLC. If this is the bar for the series going forward, then I am positively ecstatic for what the next generation can bring us. In terms of age, Dmitry Glukhovsky's Metro game series is far younger than Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell is. Yet, despite only having 2 titles to its name, my love for the Metro series is on par, if not greater, than the part of my heart I reserve for one of my favorite authors. I've always had a soft spot for Cold War era fiction, exploring the dynamic of Eastern and Western conflict and the perspectives contained therein, so it should come naturally that I would like games like Freedom Fighters and World in Conflict. I also enjoy a good post-apocalyptic game that explores a dangerous world where the fauna is just as dangerous as the people who live in it. So imagine my surprise when I found out that the members of the core Stalker team broke off from GSC Game World after the development of Shadow Chernobyl to make Metro 2033, a linear first-person shooter set in the Moscow underground 20 years after the bombs have dropped. Yeah, I was excited, and Metro 2033 became one of my favorite games of 2010. I never expected Metro 2033 to get a sequel, so its announcement the following year had me on the edge of my seat. Last Light, as Metro 2034 would come to be called, was a victim of THQ's downfall in late 2012, and I found myself very worried for its release. Deep Silver rescued it from cancellation though, and released the game proper only 2 months after its originally projected release date, and man, did it go on to become a wonderful release. Even despite the tumultuously small budget and the horrid working conditions its developers had to live with. Seriously, go look it up sometime. You'll be amazed at what they were able to accomplish once you play this game. If I had to narrow it down to just one aspect that appeals to me the most about the Metro series, it would have to be the atmosphere developer 4A Games put together to create the world of Metro Underground. Everything feels old and barely functional. The world is decaying all around the survivors of the nuclear fire, and everything is incredibly makeshift and jerry-rigged, not to ensure a better quality of life, but to make sure you just live one more day. Weapons feel old and broken. Supplies are exceptionally limited, and enemies, both human and not, are far more common and dangerous than you can imagine them to be. Artyom's story, based on the canonically correct yet bad ending in Metro 2033, allows us a far deeper and more immersive presentation of the Moscow Underground and the warring factions contained within. Its sad, dying world is a thrill to play in, thanks to dramatically redone and smart AI for both humans as well as the game's plethora of vicious mutants and the dangerous secrets hidden everywhere. The game retains the supernatural aspects that inundate the darkness of the tunnels and the irradiated surface, and will make you question your ability to retain your bladder at many instances. The journey our hero undertakes shows us the deepest, darkest parts of our humanity, as irrational fratricide and almost incomprehensible moral destitution abounds. And yet, there's no truly right answer. For Artyom, his story is one that has him all but certainly condemning humanity to extinction, and yet, through it all, there's just a glimmer of hope that the survivors of mankind's darkest hour may just see the light of day. Metro Last Light is a truly wonderful game to experience, and you would be doing yourself a disservice by not playing it or its prequel. Though it took me a long time to reach a decision as to which of these two great games deserve it, Metro Last Light is my game of the year for 2013. Well, that's it guys, that's my top 10 list for 2013. These lists are never easy to create, and I felt bad about leaving off such great titles as Devil May Cry, State of Decay, The Stanley Parable, and yes, even Battlefield 4. If you wouldn't mind, please consider leaving feedback below or at our website, 4playernetwork.com. And if you enjoyed this video or any others, think about liking or even subscribing to us. I ask because these videos have taken us more than 2 months to produce, and we only do it because we want to entertain and inform you about what's going on in gaming today. I'd also like to give a shout out to Joe Nielsen, the composer behind the Black Mesa soundtrack, for allowing us the opportunity to utilize one of his many wonderful pieces. So be sure to click on the link you see on screen to check out the rest of his album. My video marks the end of the staff top 10 list for this year, but we have one more coming for you, a list you guys put together for us, so please stay tuned for that. Again, thanks for watching guys, and I hope you stick with us in 2014.